Alright, Diablo 4 players, so let's go over the brand new updated Frozen Orb build with the brand new buffs that we received recently, and I want to go over kind of the build guide. So for starters, the build in terms of the buffs, it's just a numbers game. So basically we have Frozen Orb's damage getting increased by 20%, but when we put this on a two-hander, it's a 40% increase. There's also a bonus with Frozen Memories going up to an additional 25%, but because we put it on an amulet, it's going to be an additional 50%. So basically, numbers go up, that's basically the buff. So you're not going to have to acquire any newer pieces of gear if you have already maybe gotten some of these aspects ready to go. You can start building into it. So basically, again, to kind of visually see what these numbers look like, if you do have this on a two-hander, you're going to get that bonus to 140x damage, which is great. And then again, the other bonus can be 138 because again, it is on a amulet. So those are the numbers in terms of the changes. Other important things to go over is basically that this build, just as a heads up, it is not going to be as strong as Hydra. If your only mindset is push the highest pit tier, Hydra is still going to be the #1 build. And I already have that for you guys, but I'll also link that down below in case any of you guys just want to push the highest pit tier. But this is still a pretty fun build if you like that Diablo 2 fantasy playstyle. Frozen Orb has always been a very iconic skill, and it definitely can do Tormented 4 content, no problem. You guys can see the gameplay in the background. We're doing the brand new strong rooms, but if you are again interested in pushing the pit, comparing this to Hydra is night and day difference. But of course, people may get tired of Hydra and they want to play other things. That's personally why I decided to play it. But it's a fun build, and if I was to compare this to Ice Shards, because I recently dropped an Ice Shards build, which is very identical because it's all cold damage, right? The build in terms of which one do I like better, I would say Ice Shards is like triple times better in terms of speed, and it's just way more satisfying to play. But of course, I like to experiment and play non-meta builds as well as just experimenting with stuff that gets buffed. So I decided to go ahead and make Frozen Orb, and it's still very good. Like, you can go to T4 content and basically delete most of the stuff in like one hit. How it works though is Frozen Orb explodes like multiple times. The first explosion applies the vulnerability, and then it does like the big chunky damage on the other explosions because you're going to be shooting out so many of these Frozen Orbs. So let's go over the skills first, and then we'll go over the gear, go over the passive tree, as well as the Paragon board. So as far as the skills go, we play Flame Shield to activate Tall Rashas. We then play Frozen Orb, because this is our damage dealer. And then we play Ice Armor just to get extra shields, but it also gives us extra damage. And then these two skills, you can play whatever Frost skills you want. There's just a damage bonus on the passive tree for more of the Frost skills, but we do not need to push these at all. And then we play Teleport to activate Tall Rashas for extra damage. And then for the enchantments, Frozen Orb is the only required one. The optional one is any other cold one. I could recommend Frost Bolt to apply more chill, or you can go and play the Ice Blades to get additional attack speed. It's kind of up to you what do you want to play. If you do play the Ice Blades, I do recommend putting the 3 additional points into it because that will allow you to get the node where it gives you increased attack speed, which is good, or you get the cooldown reduction. So the Ice Blades has some potential in this build as well. So now that we went over the skills and the enchantments, let's go over the gear. So I will include a Mythic version and a non-Mythic version, and I want to go over the differences first. So the Mythic version will play Air of Perdition, or you could play Harlequin if you want to. And then we run the Shroud of False Death, and then we play Ring of the Starless Skies. For the non-Mythic one, I will recommend Godslayer, and then also Aspect of Mind's Awakening. I love this one so much. It's one of my favorite aspects in the entire game. Just gives you crazy tankiness. And then also you can run the aspect of Shredding Blades. There is a thing where it does talk about specifically like Ice Blades vulnerability. That we don't really need it for that. We're just using it for the you gain vulnerable damage. It's just like the higher multiplier here. Or you can play Accelerating if you want to. It's up to you. And then I like running Godslayer just because it's kind of fun to group up all the enemies because you're going to be constantly freezing stuff. So it's fun to play as well. But you can run any other helm if you want to. Heck, you can actually run the one that is supposed to be for the Ice Shards, and if you activate it, it can give you a bigger damage multiplier. However, it does become a little bit more clunky in terms of the playstyle. You have to activate this to get the bonus and then swap back. So I would say at that point just play Ice Shards because you're going to just cast Ice Shards anyways, so I would recommend just playing that. That's why I'm going to put Godslayer in here. But again, as far as the differences go, that would be the Mythic and the non-Mythic variant. But as far as the gear goes, again, Air Perdition, Shroud of False Death, these are kind of seen in like every single Diablo build. And then for the gloves, we want to get ranks to Frozen Orb, and then getting crit, attack speed's great. Getting cold damage, vulnerable damage, crit damage. It's pretty easy to get 100% crit in this build with specifically Air Perdition and Starless Skies. It just makes things very, very easy to achieve. And then we're going to be running Tybalt's Will. Unlike the Ice Shards build where we need to freeze things, here it's not as important to consistently freeze things because it will eventually get frozen. It's just like the first pop kind of hits them, and you can see like this is a boss from the Nightmare Dungeons, and you can still melt the bosses quite fast. But if you're doing tormented bosses, again, Hydra is like the #1 go-to. But Tybalt is great just for a damage multiplier in the pants area. Then we have Penitent Greaves for extra crit, as well as that chill. And then, again, you get another damage multiplier. And then the aspect of Frozen Orbit. The Frozen Orb is going to explode multiple times and deal additional damage here. And then we want to masterwork, specifically the chance for Frozen Orb projectiles to cast twice. That's the most important thing here. And then we run the brand new upgraded Frozen Memories here. That would be something that's great. You also want to temper on armor. You may need to get some of it masterwork depending on your role if you do want to cap out on specifically 1,000 armor. Honestly, Sorc is so incredibly tanky at this point in the game that you really could get away with like 500 armor. And then we also run Tal Rasha's Iridescent Loop over here, just like every single Sorc build, and then Starless Skies. So it's pretty much bread and butter here. You can also play if you want to, Fist of Fate is another option that you can play in the build, just in case any of you guys did build the Ice Shards build and you want to like just try it out, it's fine. As far as the runes go, I like Igni Ohm and then Neo Vex, and then we play, of course, the Catalyst on the Frozen Orb, and we're playing the Cold one. You could also play a Shadow one for more damage reduction. So you can play Bottled Wind. You can also play Tranquil Stone as well as Floaty Bubble. That's going to give us a nice way to teleport towards the enemies. One thing with the Frozen Orb skill, if you do play on Controller will automatically get the Frozen Orb to pop directly on the enemy, but if you run Floaty Bubble, it's going to force you to teleport right on the enemy, which if you basically name lock or have the enemy kind of on your screen, it's going to automatically pop the Frozen Orb instantly, so you won't get all of the damage, but it'll kind of activate faster because it'll instantly pop. Because how it works is it goes out and it does damage a couple times, and then it pops. The big pops are the damage, essentially, the bigger sources of damage. So what Floaty Bubble do is, technically it lowers your DPS, but it actually increases your DPS in terms of output, in terms of the speed. So there's like kind of a give and take. If you want to swap this out for any other power one, that's totally fine as well. As far as the gems go, it's basically crit and then int, and then we run this to get extra damage reduction. Scornful Light can give you extra damage, and then Idol will give you extra damage as well as survivability. So that's what we are going to be using. So the main strength is like it's Diablo 2 Frozen Orb. If you do want to get the like Diablo 2 playstyle, just teleporting around like crazy, because you know teleport has a cooldown in Diablo 4, you can run Harlequin. You want to get cooldown reduction and triple masterwork the crit, and then triple crit on specifically the cooldown reduction, and then get cooldown reduction on Tal Rasha's, and again try to get as much cooldown as possible, and then you can go a lot faster. You can even swap out the boots if you want to, and even run the teleport enchant if you want to go even faster. But that's basically what I would recommend. But as far as the skill tree goes, let me go and make this a little bit bigger. So as far as the skill tree goes, we're obviously playing Frozen Orb over here. There has been an update. It hasn't been updated in the planner, but what it does is the Frozen Orb will always make enemies vulnerable. It doesn't have any like lucky hit chance or anything. It just automatically. I know it says 40%, but again, it's been updated. We get this to get more damage, and then at one point over here, we get Ice Armor. You can get the increased damage or the cooldown reduction. It's kind of up to you, but because how it works is you get 60% mana cost reduction. It's a little bit hard to tag this and have it up 100% of the time with the build because you get so much resource cost reduction with the Avalanche passive. This is extra lucky hit to freeze, but you can get either one of these if you want to play Ice Blades. That is optional. But basically mostly just like damage and barrier, and then extra damage over here. We get extra elemental synergies. That's why we equip more of the frost skills. Got permafrost over here, and then more cooldown reduction, and then avalanche with its new buff over here. So it says that it costs 30% less. Again, you get the other amulet. It's going to give you another 30%, so you have 60% reduction, and again 138 to again show you guys what that looks like. This is why you get 60% resource cost reduction, which is already great, and then Harlequin gives you another 50%, and then everything is free. So you can throw in Cax Rune if you want to in the build. I just felt like I didn't like to be out of mana sometimes. Now, it's really not that big of a deal because it costs so little that you're going to be able to get it. But sometimes you could run into the situation where it's like down for like half a second. But you could play Cax Rune if you want to see higher DPS numbers. And then as far as the Paragon board, we're going to be starting off with Tactician over here, so more damage. And then we get Frigid Fate with Control. And then we go over to a Fundamental Release with the Winter over here. So every time we chill or freeze an enemy, again, we're going to be ramping up on damage. And then we get Icefall with Destruction over here, so increased damage with our Frost skills, which is excellent. We get extra crit damage. And then Exploit for the last one over here to get increased damage to vulnerable targets. The main thing is that you get all of these ones last. So getting all these dex nodes last is key here, and getting these dex nodes earlier on is much better because the difference is 43% versus 13%. I feel like they really kind of screwed over the numbers on this one. It should be actually different, especially if you compare Rogue to this one. So yeah, Exploit gives you the smallest numerical stat, but it does give you an X multiplier on vulnerable. There's just a lot of like conditional ones with the Sorc, and the damage ones don't exactly go up as high as other ones. But you could swap out Exploit honestly for another one if you want to. It just gives you damage on vulnerable here, and then you can get more vulnerable damage, and it obviously has a multiplier on it. But it ramps up quite fast because Frozen Orb actually hits the targets multiple times. But this is kind of one where if you want to swap out this one, go for it. Anyways, that's going to go ahead and wrap up the build guide. If you guys have played Frozen Orb, let me know if you guys enjoy it, or if you guys have found any other cool things to play around with for Season 9. But I figure it got an update and no one's really talking about it, so I'll go ahead and drop the build guide and have some fun with it. And it was pretty enjoyable. But if you guys have not played the Ice Shards in Season 9, obviously highly recommend it. Check that one out. I recently did the build guide for it, and I think it's way better. Even with that and this, they both kind of receive the same sort of buffs because, again, Avalanche is the key passive here. And if you're wondering also why I don't play Fractured Winterglass, which is something that you can play if you want your conjurations to do damage. So it used to have this bonus where it would just give you flat damage, but then it got moved to the conjurations damage. So there is kind of a nerf with that. Plus the massive multiplier that you lose if you do play that doesn't make Frozen Orb deal the damage. It's something that I kind of want to stress, because if you play the Fractured Winterglass, you lose out on the Avalanche key passive in your amulet, which is 138x, plus you could lose out on Permafrost, Icy Touch, and all the other multipliers that would make Frozen Orb deal like the big damage. So if you want to play, it's basically a completely different build, and at that point you might as well just play Hydra, because that's relying on, again, the conjuration damage anyways. So that's why no one's really playing that version of the build anymore. It used to be really good back when Lightning Spear was really good as well, but things obviously have shifted. But have some fun with the build, guys. If there's any suggestions or questions on the build, let me know down below, and I'll be sure to answer them. But anyways, that's gonna wrap it up. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and I'll be dropping updates if we need to with this build as well as other builds in the future. But take care, Diablo gamers. I'll see you in the next video. Also, the link will be in the pin as well as in the bio for like the planner.